Hey Tammy, how you doing? Good to see you here. All right, everybody, if you're out there, let me hear from you. If you could add in the chat where you're joining us from. All right, thank you, Sheena. Arlington, Virginia. Emily, Florida. Where in Florida, Emily? Where are you? Patricia, Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay, we got folks from all over the country here today. That's fantastic. Tampa, Florida, Jacksonville, west of Jacksonville. Nice. Okay, okay. Well, great. Welcome, everybody. As you roll in, please feel free to add to the chat here. Virginia, a lot from Virginia. I love Virginia. Virginia's for lovers, right? So I always love that. Okay, well, welcome everybody to our Tech Tuesday webinar. This is my first webinar of the new year, so I have to say Happy New Year to everybody. I think it's still okay to say that. So Happy New Year to you all. Oh, we have someone from Uzbekistan. Salam alaikum, welcome. Okay, so as you're typing in where you're from, please feel free to interact on the chat as well with each other. This is just as much about building a community, a teaching practice as anything. So feel free to connect with those that you meet in this webinar through the chat. That would be fantastic. Just before we kind of jump into things, I do want to give music credit to the Maharaja Flamenco Trio. That's the music that you're hearing. If you're interested in that music, I'm actually, full disclaimer, I'm part of the band. Okay, so but if you like what you heard or you want to hear some more of that, there's the website mftrio.com. So I want to thank you for being present today, either by being here together live or viewing the video later. I also want to support your decision on creating the time and the space in your day, in your busy day, for your professional development. So our mindset, knowledge, skills, and abilities are some of our most valuable assets in life. And investing in ourselves always pays off. So congratulations. I just want to congratulate you and applaud you for being here. My name is Dr. Ramin Yazdan Pana, and I have the honor and pleasure to lead us in our webinar today, leveraging the power in the hands of our students, approaches, activities, and resources to effectively utilize mobile technology. So this webinar should be of interest to teachers and administrators of adult ESOL programs. We will discuss a powerful tool that is already in the hands of the majority of our students towards developing language, knowledge, and skills, as well as develop the habits of learner autonomy and agency. So I have the honor of speaking to you today from Istanbul, Turkey, a little closer to Uzbekistan than Florida. And with that, I just wanted to share that just express kind of my appreciation for all of you who have reached out and expressed your concern and support for me personally, and the people of Turkey that have been directly affected in this difficult time, of course, due to the earthquakes. So my family, fortunately, was not directly affected. We live in Istanbul here, if you can see my cursor. Okay, so this is to the west of Turkey, and you can see where the earthquakes hit and continue to affect this region of Turkey. So we're doing what we can to kind of help friends and family and others who need support. If you would like and are able to provide any kind of support, here's a QR code here that I provide that you can scan with your phone. I'm also going to copy and paste this link into the chat. And so this is a reputable organization. Again, if you would like to provide any kind of support to a trustworthy organization, that's one way that you can do that. We are a global community. I think that's more apparent every year. And so your prayers, your thoughts, your concern, your support, and all those kind of different ways is felt and appreciated. So thank you from the heart. Okay, just a couple of logistics here. If you have a question, well, if we will use the Q&A option mostly at the end of the webinar, okay? So if you could kind of hold your questions to the end, that would be appreciated. With that said, I'd like you to use the chat option for most of our interaction during our webinar. Feel free to use exclamation points, emojis, any way to express your tone and emotion. You will only be in listen mode, so the more you can engage in the chat, the better. I need to feel the love, right, Virginia? I need to feel some of that love. So we will also have polls and links to an interactive and collaborative activities throughout the webinar as well. I'd like to thank the always supportive and loving ELT team, June, Tammy, Joseph, for your support. That you always provide all the support a webinar presenter like me could ask for. And this presentation, as well as the PowerPoint slides, will be available on the ELT site. Actually, they are, but the recording will be available within 48 hours for your review and for your sharing. And again, I sincerely hope your experience in this webinar contributes positively to your professional development. Okay, so here's a brief roadmap of where we're going today. So we'll first start with a rationale for why a focus on how to leverage mobile technologies with our ESOL students, what it is and how it will increasingly become important. We'll have a brief overview of communicative language teaching, or CLT, and with the English language teaching approaches associated with CLT. We will discuss the importance of pre-planning to plan for differentiation and look at planning using Bloom's taxonomy as a framework to scaffold learning. Finally, I'll discuss preparing for challenges with using mobile technologies, and that will lead into a Q&A where you can provide your questions and comments. I will provide a QR code and link to all resources I mentioned in this webinar at the end. And we'll also discuss mobile-friendly community tools and platforms throughout our talk today. I'll also ask for your input as well. I know how resourceful we are as educators. So this is an opportunity to crowdsource mobile-friendly teaching resources. So please, I hope you're willing to share. Don't feel shy about it. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that most of us realize why smartphones are a powerful tool for student English language learning, as well as connecting to resources for life and work skill development. I do, however, think the following research and statistics can help to understand the growth in the use of smartphones, as well as how they can increase learner motivation. So according to the Pew Research Center, the vast majority of Americans, 97%, now own a cell phone of some kind. The share of Americans that own a smartphone is now up 85% from just 35% in 2011. So you can see the upward increase, and I think we can say with certainty that this is going to increase as smartphones in particular become more affordable and access becomes greater. In 2021, approximately 63% of all online traffic came from smartphones and tablet devices. And a report revealed that 70% of learners feel more motivated when they are using their mobile devices for training, for educational purposes, as opposed to when they're using only a desktop device. Now, I'm not sure how accurate that percentage is for all learners and specifically for our adult ESOL learners. And there's no doubt that motivation is also connected to how well mobile learning is designed for learners' needs. With that said, given the ubiquitousness of smartphones, as well as the frequency many teachers and students are on them, it is no surprise that this is the case. So mobile phones have become really an indispensable device in various settings, in the modern workplace, in the classroom, in people's everyday lives, from social media to business tools to, different kinds of social kind of, interaction. A mobile device brings a number of advantages to its users. In fact, it has become such an important tool that hardly a day goes by when users don't use their phones. A recent study found that the average person touches his or her phone at least 2,617 times a day, providing that mobile devices have become efficient tools, if not maybe addictive tools, to stay connected with others and provide users with a sense of connection and sometimes security. Mobile phones were first introduced to the public. When they were first introduced to the public, they were meant to become a portable version of telephones, allowing people to communicate without the constraints of wires or phone holders. I think most of us here are old enough, maybe, to remember the days, right? Before smartphones, before mobile phones, before smartphones. Over the years, they have evolved into comprehensive and advanced tools that serve various purposes: communication, entertainment, emergency, storage, applications such as voice, video, all kinds of different kinds of even editing software. Focusing in on our field of adult ESOL education, we know how important it is to support learner autonomy by knowing how to leverage the tools available to our students, such as smartphones. For many of our students, their smartphones are their primary, if not only, tool that they have provided, that it's their smartphones are their primary, if not only, tool that they own that provide them access to the internet, as well as multimedia tools such as voice and voice recorders. We all know how important it is to cultivate a community of learning among our adult ESOL students and teachers to reinforce and expand on the language and skills learned in class, as well as to continually develop digital skills by integrating applications of technology to meet the life and work skills, needs, interests, and goals of our students. I'm just seeing here in the chat here, Rob says, when I was a kid, my phone being mobile meant the cord was long enough to take it into another room. I remember the days. Okay, so before exploring direct applications of smartphone use for adult ESOL learners in more depth, I'd like to take a step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture of communicative language teaching. So communicative language teaching is a communicatively based view of teaching and learning that can be thought of as an umbrella under which an array of approaches and instructional practices can be used. In fact, cooperative learning, task-based learning, content-based instruction, and project-based learning all adhere to many of the same communicative principles. Even a competency-based curriculum can be executed using communicative principles. In all of these approaches, learners take on very active roles as they engage in problem-solving activities, discussions, or debates, working with and applying authentic language, real-world uses. Both content and classroom activities represent real-world uses of language that correspond to the strengths, wants, and needs of students in our classes. Students develop listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills concurrently with a focus on form, meaning, and use, along with opportunities for controlled practice that are encouraged as needed by learners. So, okay, now that we've kind of gone over a bit of communicative language teaching, let's explore some direct applications of smartphone use with adult learners under the umbrella of communicative English language teaching. All right, so let's look just briefly here at some of the more common mobile-friendly community platforms for communication. And if you could, please let us know which ones you utilize in the chat. So of course we have phone and video calls with a purpose, right? So just using a phone calls, video calls, doing those with your students, having your students do engage in those with each other can be a use of their smartphone technology. Voice messages, right? Using their phone line, or using apps, of course, such as like WhatsApp, can be a way to send voice messages and integrate those into activities. Text messages, again, that can be either through the phone line or through applications such as Messenger, WhatsApp, those kinds of things. So discussion boards, those can be on more kind of formal discussion boards, I would say, or more kind of like educational discussion boards through LMSs, learning management systems, Canvas, for example. Or they can be discussion boards that you create yourself, maybe through a Facebook group, maybe through a WhatsApp kind of group. But discussion boards can be great places to post a question, to post media, and then ask students to engage and to comment on that media. And finally, we have Google Drive. So that's a great kind of suite. Actually, I think it's called Google Workspace now. So we'll look at some applications of all these different platforms and tools in the slides to come. And let me just kind of come back over here to our chat. We have Michelle. Hello, Michelle. WhatsApp, Hey Market, texting, great, are best for us. Students don't seem to check email or voicemail anymore. Okay. Janaya says text messages, Google Drive, not so much phones for discussions, leaving messages. Primarily text. Rob, you say primarily text, but you've conducted tutoring sessions on students' phones. Okay, great. So, a lot of this stuff is about experimentation, and I hope we have that kind of mindset as teachers, looking at our classes as spaces to experiment, seeing what works with the class, seeing what works more with kind of individual students. That's kind of part of differentiation as well. But applying different approaches, having fun with them, asking students, what platforms, what tools do they prefer, and what do they use? Okay, so we're going to discuss a little bit more, again, in depth, some specific applications. Some of these may be familiar to you, so please feel free to share in this Jamboard that I'm pointing to here. You can scan that if you're on mobile. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat so you all can link to that. And this is the Jamboard here. So if you all can kind of link to the Jamboard, and as we're talking about these different approaches, these different teaching approaches, here I love when I spell things, you can add some ideas of how smartphones could be used for the following teaching approaches. Okay, so this is where we kind of crowdsource a little bit some of our ideas. Okay, so to get us going, these activities can be done both on mobile and on desktop. So the first here is cooperative language learning. Okay, so or CLL. This emphasizes peer support and learning through carefully planned pair and group activities. It centers around group tasks where each member is held accountable for his or her learning and where outcomes to activities are dependent on a genuine exchange of information among participants. For example, like the activity that we're engaged in now, right? So in Google Workspace, you can create a Jamboard to collect responses to questions and collectively brainstorm activities. It's an excellent tool to use during and after classes in both classroom and online contexts. Just remember to set the share settings to edit that allows all participants who have the link to contribute, right? So if we go here to share, of course, you have to set things to anyone with the link can be the editor, or you can set it to viewer. If you want students to contribute, make sure it's set to editor. Okay, and for this, if you're not familiar with Jamboards, how you contribute is you can have a text box, or you can make a kind of sticky note. So you can click on that sticky note icon and then write your information here in the sticky note, hit save, and then that will post. And then you can move the sticky note around underneath the different categories. Just a quick poll in the chat here. Do any of you use Jamboard for any of your educational activities? You can just say yes or no in the chat. Thank you, Janaya. Yeah, I love Jamboard as well. It's so easy, straightforward, and you know it's very accessible too. So this Google Workspace suite is excellent. We'll refer to a couple of more things in that suite. Before I get to the next one, I also want to mention these QR codes. So I created these QR codes actually using an application that we're going to talk about soon, but it's actually an Adobe Express. So within the Adobe Express suite, you can create QR codes. So if you have Adobe, if you have a subscription to, for example, Adobe Acrobat, you have access to the suite, and you can create these QR codes from, for example, URL links. So we'll look at that here in a little bit. Okay, the next here is content-based instruction. This is an approach to teaching that makes subject matter such as history, environmental studies, math, citizenship, the basis of the curriculum. The career contextualized integrated and education and training model, or IET, is an example. So if you all utilize content-based instruction, you know, in your classrooms, you can let us know in the chat. There's some links here too that I'll provide later. But here's some examples of some content-based instruction. One is this U.S. citizenship podcast. If I click there here, it'll just kind of go to that there. So you can, for example, send students a podcast link, and then, you know, a task, for example, to go along with that podcast. Another here is this financial literacy that's provided from the Florida Literacy Coalition. And this is, let me see if I can click on this link directly. Yes, so there are these financial literacy resources that are excellent that you can provide. Of course, this is available for educator resources, for student resources. If you click here in student resources, they have some really interesting games that can be accessed through mobile. So you can see it has it both in English and in Spanish. This financial football, I know for a fact, works on mobile. I think some of them you should try them out before you send them to your students for mobile. But I know the financial football is a great game to develop financial literacy. I used it for my own financial literacy. So just some examples there of applying content-based instruction. Okay, so moving on here is task-based learning, okay, or TBL. So task-based learning is based on classroom and real-world tasks that learners need to complete in the target language, such as an information gap activity or development of a project. rather than on a set of language features that need to be taught. So an example is writing an email, right? Using a mobile email app that students already use. Students can brainstorm email topics that are relevant to their lives, think of a real or hypothetical person or or an organization to address it to, prepare drafts that they can share, send to the teacher, send to other students, and kind of develop this as a writing activity. I'm curious in the chat, do any of you all utilize email and kind of like utilize email for writing development? So if you can just say yes or no in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Another here is to play with GPT. We've been learning a lot about listening and hearing a lot in the news about AI. So, instead of kind of being intimidated by it, why not play around with it in class while it's still free? By entering keywords. For example, you could write a very easy article about the benefits of mobile phones for English language learning for adults. And so you'll get ChatGPT to, let's see if it's available. Sometimes because it's so popular, it's becoming overloaded, but let's see here if it's available. If it is, we'll give it a shot. Okay, so yeah, here we go. So let me put in this here. Okay, and if you enter in that, the artificial intelligence magically, creates a short essay. So this can be a way to generate reading content for your learners, for them to kind of like analyze how these are structured, maybe even for them to then kind of customize and modify in a sense, right? So these are tools of the present and increasingly of the future. So why not integrate them into our classes so students are aware of them and know how to utilize them for their purposes? So pretty amazing, this artificial intelligence. Thank you, Janaya. Hyperwrite is another good AI tool. Janaya, if you could add that to our list here, to our Jamboard, would super appreciate it. So yeah, all kinds of AI tools that are worthy of exploring. Okay, so another here is project-based learning. So this is an approach that allows for maximum learner involvement and choice in the learning process. Learners choose a topic of interest or concern to them, and then direct their learning through inquiry, research on a topic, and collaboration with others. So an example is using tools such as Google Workspace and Adobe Creative Cloud Express to provide kind of a suite of mobile and desktop friendly tools. One of my favorite here on Adobe Creative Cloud Express is, so if you click on this plus button here, you can see all of the different options, right? So you can create graphics. You can create graphics from your photo, logos, flyers, collages, Instagram posts, stories, Facebook posts, cards, web pages, video. I really like using this video app because that allows students to do these kind of photo slideshows where they upload photos that they find on the web or photos that they take themselves, and then write a script, and then record that script. So they're able to send that to me. I'm able to give them feedback, and they're able to really easily kind of edit and re-record. So it's a great project-based kind of tool to use towards kind of individual and group projects. Janai, I'm really appreciating all your AI wisdom here. I'm just curious if anyone has used anything from Adobe Creative Cloud Express. Just a yes or no in the chat would be appreciated. Okay, so let's take a step back and look at how we can plan for using mobile phone technology to address differentiation. So differentiated instruction is an approach that enables instructors to plan strategically to address the needs and interests of every learner, consider learners' readiness, and is rooted in the belief that there is variability among any group of learners. And then instructors should adjust instruction accordingly. So here we have a great link to that I'm going to post in the chat. And this is to this video here, differentiating instruction. It's not as hard as you think. You can use this, you can view this later, you can share this, but I just wanted to kind of share that with you all now. So a primary step to differentiation is, of course, collecting information to better understand our students, such as their learning habits, their digital habits, and current digital skill set. All right, so all of this information is essential to planning for differentiation. This can easily be done through a short survey or poll like this one I'd like you to take now. So I'm going to launch a poll here for you all that I'd like you to take. Okay, and these are 3 questions here. So the first question is, what device do your students use more often to access the internet? Mobile or desktop? So go ahead and if you can answer that for us. The second one, do you currently use mobile phones with your adult ESOL students? And 3, do you think your students would benefit from English language learning lessons that leverage the use of mobile phones more frequently? Just give you all a couple of more seconds. Give me a chance to take a sip of this green tea. All right, 3 more seconds. And let's analyze our poll results. So, okay, so we have for what device do students use more often to access the internet? Okay, so we have 88% using mobile and desktop 13%. Do you currently use mobile phones with your students? Okay, so we have 44% yes, 56% no. So perhaps this webinar can give you some further ideas for those of you who are currently using or integrating kind of mobile phone use in your lessons. And for those of you who aren't, maybe this will give you some ideas of how you can do that. And do you think your students would benefit from lessons that leverage the use of mobile phones more frequently? So we have 94% that say yes. Okay, so I'm going to share those results with you. Sorry, I thought I was sharing them before. Okay, so I'm going to click that out and we'll continue here. Thank you for taking that poll. So moving on here to Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy provides a really useful tool that we can apply towards planning for differentiation. The learning verbs can help us design lessons that intentionally build progression of learning. I promise I'll tie this back to mobile technologies. As we can see in this pyramid, the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid, the lower order thinking skills, or lots of remember, understand, and apply, are ideal when introducing new language and skills. The higher order thinking skills, or HOTS, of analyze, evaluate, and create, challenge learners to engage in more critical analysis and even more creative expression. Crafting learning objectives and aligning them with learning activities in this way allows for the scaffolding of instructional techniques that helps move students progressively towards stronger understanding and greater independence in the learning process. So we're going to look at some examples of how we can of how we can plan for activities using this taxonomy. I'm going to provide a bunch of different resources here, additional resources on Bloom's taxonomy in the chat. Again, all of these will be available for you in this PowerPoint and at the end of the webinar. Okay, just out of curiosity, for in the poll, and not as a poll, but in the chat, are you familiar and do you utilize Bloom's taxonomy in your planning? So just a simple yes or no in the chat would be appreciated. Okay, so let's see here. And again, if you can get back to our, thank you all for your contributions here. We'll look at them later. But this is another space here on our Jamboard for mobile applications for lots and hots. So as I kind of discuss some examples of mobile applications for lots and hots, if you can add any more under each one of these thinking skills that we'll discuss right now. So for remember and recall, one example is to use notes or note card apps. So for example, apps such as Quizlet, where you can create your own, or Duolingo, where students can go at their own pace, and there are activities that students can engage with at different levels. I personally use Duolingo. I'm not getting paid by them to say this, but I do use them. I'm learning Turkish as I am in Turkey right now. So I'm just curious to know if any of you all use anything, any kind of similar apps like Quizlet or Duolingo yourself. Or do you use them with your students? Just a simple yes or no in the chat. Oh, thank you, Michelle Kahoot. So if you could add that, please, Michelle, add that to our Jamboard. I would appreciate it. We would all appreciate it. Comprehension. So this can be answering questions, quiz or a poll. I personally like to use Google Forms because it's free. I'm already using Google, tools. So, for comprehension questions, if you want to send students a link, for example, to their email or through WhatsApp or whatever you're using to communicate with your students, then you can do that. You can send them, you can create something on Google Forms and send it to them for some comprehension questions. I'm just looking here, Veronica. Hey, Veronica. She says we can also use the DOK, recall knowledge application, strategic thinking, and extended thinking, as well as Bloom's taxonomy. Thank you, Veronica. The next here is application. So at the top of the lots is application. So for example, to apply language to accomplish a task. So again, one very practical example is using a mobile app that they're already using, right? So that's why I really like things like email. So, applying a task, addressing maybe a job board kind of notification, anything that has students kind of applying their information, the knowledge that they're learning in class, the vocabulary, grammar that they're learning, and in some kind of applied way through mobile apps. Again, they're on their mobile apps, right? They have access to them. Oftentimes our learners don't have desktop apps. So thinking of how you can have students apply what they're learning in class through their smartphones. So any kind of ideas here under application, please add that. So analysis. So for analysis, we can organize ideas into an outline. So one idea can be through Google Sheets, right? So we looked at those financial resources through the Florida Literacy Coalition. Please check that out because they have a lot of, under the educator resources, they have a lot of information about planning, budgeting, financial planning. So this is a great opportunity with our adult learners to work on a budget. That can be for a personal budget or for, a business plan. So combining these tools with these resources can be a great way to apply task-based and project-based learning in the classroom. And of course, evaluation, right? So now we're getting to the very top of that Bloom's taxonomy period. So one activity that I like to do with students is to critique media. I feel that media literacy and being critical of media is so important. It's such an important life skill and potentially an important work skill. So one way that I apply this is through creating a Facebook group and using that kind of like as an LMS, right? And so what I'll do is I'll take a commercial, for example, from YouTube, post it there as a video, and then ask students to critique it. So this is something we'll practice in class first. but we'll critique it and analyze commercials for, of course, linguistic elements, but also, some cultural elements there too, right? What are the values that this commercial is utilizing in order to sell you something? What are they communicating? What are some other kinds of strategies that media uses to kind of sell you things? So once students can kind of understand that, I can extend that activity through an app like Facebook groups and through YouTube, and then have students share commercials from their countries, right? So this is applying a kind of translingualing method. So it allows students to kind of share and critique media from their own cultures, share that with us. I love seeing media from other countries. And so again, it's just applying and reinforcing these linguistic as well as kind of sociolinguistic skills that are so important in life and in the workplace. And then finally create. So, we looked at some of those, all of these different amazing kind of tools here, right? That is available on applications such as Adobe Creative Cloud, as well as on Canva. So, both of these kind of apps are for the most part, there's a lot of free tools that are available, and you can have students, create an ad campaign of their own. So instead of just being kind of passive consumers of knowledge, you're actually developing their ability to create information, to create knowledge, to express themselves and to share that with the world. So this is going from being knowledgeable to knowledge able, right? They're able to create knowledge, to author knowledge. This is a very empowering tool for our students, and potentially a skill set that they can apply to employment, right? In their current positions and for their future positions. I'm just reading the chat. Veronica, thank you. We're fine. I appreciate your concern. Okay, moving on here. So, of course, using smartphones does have its challenges. One can be costs, right? So basic models are cheaper every year, but there are federal and state programs. One is the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. This is actually a new federal free government phone program committed to bringing connectivity to low-income Americans. So if you find that students might need help in purchasing a smartphone, there could be some financial resources available. Some of our students can be new to using some of these mobile apps, so there can be a learning curve, right? So one approach is to, like I mentioned before, practice in class. Before you ask students to do anything outside of class, practice with them in class. And always there are more capable students who are more familiar with certain apps, oftentimes more so than I am, right? And so we can pair students that might be new to using those apps with partners that are more familiar. So that's kind of an easy fix, and it's a very kind of learner-centered approach. Screen size of smartphones can also be an issue for some adults, regarding accessibility. So supporting students to increase the text and display size in their settings in the app on their phones can help. There are even ways to magnify text on iPhone and Android devices. And I'm actually going to post an article for the New York Times that provides some good strategies and tips on accessibility, right, for smartphone technology. Increased workload is a potential concern, right? So one important thing is to manage expectations. If you're going to have students email you, set really clear guidelines on what that should be. If they're texting you, or a group, right? Set very clear guidelines on what you're expecting from them. But you could also include peer feedback. So a great thing about these kind of mobile tools like WhatsApp, for example, is that they are collaborative, right? It's not just the student teacher like an email might be, but it's actually posting to a group. So part of a rubric, let's say, or a checklist can be to require students to provide peer feedback. And this can take the load off of educators, as well as just to get students more engaged in the activities. Okay, so I promised you the shared resources. There's the QR code there. It's actually here too. So I'm going to copy and paste this to the chat. So this is where all of the different apps that I have discussed are going to be in here. I'm going to go to our Jamboard and copy and paste any other kind of apps. So if any come to mind, I'm going to leave this Jamboard open here, and please add any other apps, any other ideas of applications, or how we could utilize our smartphones to support our students. Okay, and so you can connect with me through LinkedIn. There's the scan code here. That takes you here to to my LinkedIn. It's actually here as well. I'll kind of copy and paste it into the chat. I'm doing this because I really value connecting with you all as fellow educators, and I hope that we can do the same with each other. So if you'd like to post your LinkedIn profile, for example, into the webinar chat, so we can all connect and stay connected, and just kind of support each other in our community of teaching practice. Please feel free to post that in the chat. Okay, so a little bit of time here for discussion. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments in the chat. Okay, so just going to give you all a couple more seconds here if you have any questions or comments. Here we go. I think I have a question here. Okay. The question is, what about apps that translate? Are they useful? I think apps that translate, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, and please add that to our Jamboard. I think apps that translate can definitely be useful. I think that doesn't have to necessarily be something that students rely on, but I think that apps that can translate, for vocabulary that students are applying, in a presentation, in an essay. I think the key there is to get students to document whatever the words that they're learning, and to be able to kind of not just rely on a translator, but to utilize it as a tool. So I think that it's what I do in my classes is I try to model best practices and uses of translation apps, of dictionary apps, for example. Again, not as a kind of tool to use as a crutch, but as a tool to kind of quickly access information and then apply it towards a communicative purpose. So Google Translate is a great one. There's even for Google Translate, there's you can turn your camera on your phone to where it reads text in a different language, and it'll translate it into another language. So that's a pretty amazing use of that technology. Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions, and that is just fine. I just wanted to thank you all for your time and your attention here today. And I really enjoyed preparing for this webinar, and I really appreciate your presence and your engagement. Um, Please join us for our next webinar tomorrow, February 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern. The topic is how to build a marketing plan for your program. So I really love that topic. I'll definitely be checking out that webinar. I think that, you know, all the great services and efforts that we make at our schools sometimes are not known in our communities. So building a marketing plan for your program. Hey, maybe you can apply some of the tools that we discussed today in building some marketing resources, right? And maybe you can get your students engaged in developing some of those marketing resources.
Hey,
So,
Dr. Yasin, this is Joseph. Can you please launch the poll? It won't launch for me. The
yes,
feedback one.
of course, no problem, Joseph. Okay, so I'm going to launch this next poll here. Let's see. So this poll is a feedback for this webinar. So if you could just take a minute to add these questions here, to address these questions here, I would appreciate it. And of course, our dear IPDA friends would appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So just take a moment there. And hey, let me provide you with a little background music here while you're taking that poll. All right, everybody. Thank you all. Take care. All the best to you and your families and your students.